our stakeholders from the City of Peoria for coming out here today and giving us this opportunity. And I am Anna Bettis.
I'm Russell Davis.
I'm Marcella Mora, and Diana is also part of our group, but she'll be joining us through video.
So Peoria started their curbside recycling relatively recently in 2007, and the problem is that they're seeing rising contamination rates from residents throwing their trash in the recycling or throwing the recycling in the trash. And this not only results in a loss of revenue, but also increased costs associated with disposing of the material in the landfill. So the goal is to decrease contamination rates and decrease contamination rates and thus increase overall recycling diversion rates. And the allowable contamination would be at most 20%, but optimum 15%. Okay, yeah, you can go to the next one. So some current strategies that they're doing is they have ads in local newspapers, they mail informational booklets, offer recycling facility tours, they participate in educational events, and they have information available online via their city website and Facebook and Twitter. And they're locating contamination by employing container inspectors, and they installed cameras in pickup trucks to spot the contamination, but only as it enters the truck. Their current diversion rate is between 23 and 25%. So you can go to the next one. So we broke up the research by disciplinary approaches. So we did case studies, policy, CBSM, which is community-based social marketing, and education. And the methods we used were we drew on existing research from a variety of fields, and then we collected data from things like government documents, from the EPA, the census. We looked at municipal recycling reports and also peer-reviewed literature, various city websites and newspapers. And we also looked at demographics, diversion rates, and we contacted City of Peoria for a better understanding of the problem and the current strategies that they're using. All right, so we looked at the strategies of some recycling leaders. Seattle, Washington was one of them. They made recycling mandatory in 2005 with their Wasteless in Seattle initiative. So effective January 1st of 2006, recycling was prohibited from the trash. And the way they implemented that was households were never actually fined, but if there was found to be contamination in their trash, they would leave it at their house with a tag on it and not pick it up till the following week after they had sorted it. But they did fine businesses on the third time that they had a violation, and they would fine them $50. And so they also did pay-as-you-throw, which I think some other groups are talking about. They did recycling rewards programs, and since 2005 when that initiative started, their diversion went from 61.4% to 71.1% in the single-family homes. And I got that from their 2012 annual recycling report, which you can also find online, and I have it in my paper if you guys want a copy of that. But the key difference with Seattle is that their landfill is 300 miles away, so they have more of like an incentive to do these recycling programs because it is so expensive for them to dispose in the landfill. So we thought that was just something we should bring up. And also Fresno, we looked at, they did a private partnership with the Jeffrey Scott Agency that helped them with marketing. And they also teach in schools. And the way they did that was actually they worked with Republic Services, and they would have a coordinator come in and talk to each of the schools about how to properly recycle. So they didn't actually come up with their own curriculum, they just had someone come talk to the students. And then they also did fees for contamination, and Fresno actually does fine residents on the third time that they have a violation, and it's added to their utility bill. So the third time it's $50, and the next time it's $100, and then $200 was the highest fine. So people did not want to be contaminating with those fines. And since they did these strategies, their diversion went from 33% to 73%. So they were very effective, and they're now a national recycling leader for cities of their size.
Okay, so as we heard from Anna, policy plays a really important role in the whole recycling process. And currently, the City of Peoria has a sustainability action plan in which they laid out goals for various sustainability issues, one of them being recycling. And some of those goals are to increase recycling throughout the city and to reduce the waste. One thing I noticed that wasn't included was reducing the contamination rate, so that's something that could be included in those goals. Furthermore, there seems to be no policy regarding recycling for the City of Peoria. And one city that does do that is San Francisco, where there's a mandatory recycling and composting ordinance, which is an ordinance that says that residents must participate in recycling programs and they must separate their trash from their recyclables and from their compostables. And that's similar to Fresno and Seattle, where all those three really high-paying cities with recycling, they all have policy in their plans. Okay, another tool that we took a look at was community-based social marketing, and that's a tool for marketing to citizens, and Diana is going to speak about that in the video.
Alright, so now that you've heard about some of the larger general principles that other cities are doing to make their recycling programs better, I want to give you a specific communication tool called community-based social marketing, or CBSM. So CBSM is special in that its whole purpose is to foster sustainable behavior change. It was created by a psychologist and behavioral expert named Doug Moore, and it's been used all over the world and internationally for projects just like this. So what makes it unique is that it's a 5-step process, and you begin with clearly and very carefully selecting a specific behavior that you want to change. So for us, it's easy. We just want people to put recyclables into the recycling and trash into the landfill bin. After you have your specific behavior, you then break it down into the barriers and benefits associated with that behavior. And once you have those, then Mackenzie Moore offers you a suite of specific tools for each one of those. So it's kind of like a recipe book. It's really easy to follow. You don't need outside experts to do it. And it's been really successful in other places. I also wanted to contrast it with some of the more traditional marketing and communication campaigns out there, just so we get a good picture of what isn't. So right now, a lot of communication campaigns are information-based, they're attitude behavior based, or they use an economic self-interest approach. And all of those can be really good tools for different things, but when it comes to looking for behavior change, we're finding out that they're not so effective. So there are 2 studies done that I'll just highlight for you. One of them was a group prepared a really wonderful handbook about water conservation. They spent a lot of time and a lot of research preparing it. They piloted it for 10 weeks, and when they went back and surveyed the households again, it was found that the households didn't practice any of the water conservation techniques that the booklet talked about. So it didn't work super great. And then also with the attitude behavior approach, they did a survey with people who, so that they highly supported energy conservation. But when they went back and looked at their actual behaviors, they were no more likely to practice energy conservation behaviors. So we need a different tool, and CBSM is a really great one for this. Okay, so if City of Peoria was going to use it, again, you're going to follow the 5-step process. And I'm not going to get too much into it, so we don't have the time for that, but I'm just going to briefly go over it. So there are 5 steps. One is to select a behavior, which we already have. We want people to put recyclables in the recycling. You then identify the barriers and benefits, and he really clearly breaks this down for how you do this successfully. You can use a couple different tools. You can use observation, focus groups, or piloting a survey. And then you develop strategies based on what you found from your results. It's great to take the assumption out of it. You really know what's driving your community to do the wrong behavior and what will help them do the right behavior. So his 5 strategies are based on commitment, social norms, social diffusion, prompts, effective messaging, and commitment. Which I already said, convenience. And again, he outlines how you apply these specific techniques which have been studied and are sort of the tried and true persuasive tools to get people to change. So then you pilot the project and you then launch and monitor it. So again, it's a really easy, really effective tool. And before I go, there's 2 case studies I want to talk to you about, which have used Another one was hold on here, the University of Oregon, and they found a 74% behavior change after using CBSM. So it is an effective tool, and we hope that it will help the City of Peoria. Thanks.
Okay, so after hearing about Diana's CBSM, we created some suggestions for the City of Peoria on how you can change your outreach to the citizens of Peoria. So the first suggestion is to move away from facility tours and gear more of that energy into classroom instruction. And the reason that we said this is because we feel that the people who are going to these tours are already interested in recycling and already have a bias towards it and are likely already recycling properly. So we thought that you can move your efforts into the classroom area. You'll be teaching children, and that is also an investment in the future. As children grow up, they'll establish these norms of recycling properly, and you can also teach that to their parents. The second suggestion we have is to update and simplify the outreach literature that you have provided, just to make it more simple for the whole public to understand. And we have one example of a piece of literature that you sent us, which is Recycling Your Tree, which was intended to help residents dispose of Christmas trees after the holidays. And what we saw was maybe confusion with the word recycle in this piece. So the formatting of the flyer may cause residents to get the wrong impression about recycling and may make them think that green waste is recyclable instead of compostable. Just with the use of the word recycle your tree kind of gives a sense like you can recycle your tree on the curbside or you can recycle your green waste on the curbside. Whereas I think it's intended to be more of you can compost your green waste and stuff like that. So we know we've had troubles with grass clippings contaminating recyclables, so this could be a way to kind of mitigate that, is to be really cognizant of how the word recycle is used so that it doesn't get confused with other words like compost.
All right, so lessons learned. We came across like incorporating policy, and in most of the case studies that we saw, not the only way, but a really effective way to make change is by incorporating policy. Market according to your citizens' interests. So as framed by the EPA, and we found that it's been found pretty effective, and it sounds stupid, but you define your citizens as recyclers versus non-recyclers, and that's the way you're going to target them. So if you guys have that annual thing you send out where it has all the information about how to recycle, where to recycle, if you incorporate, so if you take our suggestion on the community-based social marketing, you can find their interests and find out who you're working with. It didn't seem like in there was a lot of incentives for non-recyclers. It was more geared toward recyclers. So it would be helpful moving forward in this project to find out the base of, Peoria. Do we have more? Are we working more with recyclers, or are we working more with people who have no clue what they're doing? So that would be something to look at. And then challenges. Involvement in the community. The numbers you guys gave us, it was like 116 adults and 753 students that had participated in your events out of a town that's somewhere around 160,000. So, I mean, that's a pretty small percentage of numbers. A way that you can involve the community, and so education is through education, and we know it'd be really challenging for you guys to work with the school districts, and we don't know what kind of curriculum-based education students are getting, but we feel that if you were to work with the school districts, come up with a curriculum at the elementary level, this would really help in the future. And so just going further in the project, we would need to know what are the students already learning, what are they being told, what do they know about recycling. But a big way to make a change and culture would be starting at the lowest level possible, and that'd be at the elementary level. To fiscal challenges. Some of these other cities we brought up to you, San Francisco, Washington, British Columbia, all these places, they have a lot more resource, bigger population, bigger tax base. They have more room to work financially, and we know that's a struggle. So that's just one of the challenges that we need to think about as we're furthering into this project. And that's basically it.
Just our references.
And we'd like to open the floor to questions. Is there specifically?
Let me start with one. This builds on one of the things Cole was saying to end this about the case studies. Talk a little bit more about what were some of the other differences in demographics and size and what they're working with. You know, for instance, it looked like Fresno went from almost no one recycling to 1/3 to 3/4 recycling. So big changes. What were some of the other similarities with Peoria versus contrasting with the differences?
I know a major difference is a lot of those cities, or I guess all of the cities that we talked about, had been recycling for a lot longer. So a lot of them started in like the 80s and the 90s. So they had a lot more time to revise their programs and figure out what was working well and what wasn't. So that's another key difference. If you guys are a little more recent, so that's one. And yeah, like Seattle has 630,000 people, so that's a very large tax base, as you talked about. So it's a lot of money. And I know the people living in those areas have a larger support for recycling to begin with. So that's another key difference. And like I said, the landfill in Seattle was really, really far away. So the cost for that is a lot more. Whereas I know I don't think yours is 300 miles away. Do you guys know any?
Yeah, I have a difference with ages. In San Francisco, the population overall is a lot older than Peoria. For example, the age of people under 18 is at around 32%, and at San Francisco it's about 17.8%. So there's a lot younger underage population, and that's where we thought that education would play a big role, because you have a bigger population to really influence there at the school level.
Yeah, so just like those are like the leaders, like San Francisco. Those are like those are the leaders. Like they're doing the best, but they go a lot further back, and so they already have like culture set up. So if we were going to push policy like in the future, you don't want to turn off your citizens like where it seems like it's in like you want it to be incentive based, but you don't want to like turn them off from recycling because they're forced to do it. Like in San Francisco, it seems like they want to do it where you don't want them to be forced to do it. So that would be a difference.
Fine line.
Any questions from Peoria?
I have a question. Did you find any local school districts and cities that seem to have a really good program as a partnership? Mesa, Tucson, or there any city that really stood out as having a really good program in their school district?
We didn't research that, but we could look at that if you'd like us to get some of that information for you.
So
Yeah.
in the future, we want to if we keep advancing with this project, we want to find out like with the Peoria School District what curriculum-based education they're giving to their students. We would need to know that, and then I know it'd be really challenging for your team to work with the school district, but we think that it would pay this in the future.
Those are definitely true statements about trying to get into school districts, because they have, for example, water conservation is built into their curriculum, whereas recycling is not. So they sort of just kind of do it on their own, and they just incorporate it into the classroom activities. It's sort of a side to the curriculum, and they have very stringent guidelines for what they are to teach in the classroom. So that is one of the challenges that we have, is trying to find that in with them, and we've even partnered with our water conservation group to try and do some dual messaging, so that while they're outreaching the water, saving water at the same time, it's now with that water bottle, throw it in the trash, put it in the recycle bin. So we try to find those little types of connections. But in your studies, did you find any surveys maybe that they did with their citizens? Because we, City of Peoria is very long, we have a really young concentration in certain areas, and then we have full retirement communities within it as well. And one of our surprising results that we found is the first time the city tried to do recycling, it was actually voted down by the residents. residents that vote are usually our older population. So, and then we went back out a second time, and that's why we did get it past the second time around. So I don't know if you come across any studies that did surveys of their citizens to get that feedback on kind of what appeals to them and how to target our messages.
Right, and that was what Diana was mainly working with, is the community-based social marketing. And, she did, within her paper, that's what she did.
Yeah, I have her paper if you guys would like a hard copy of that also. Yeah, she talks about that a lot more. I was in the same class with her when we learned about community-based social marketing. And I know they did it like in Portland, Oregon, and what they did was they I don't know what survey questions they used, but we could probably find those for you. But they surveyed the population, and they were trying to get people to quit putting pesticides on their lawns. And they tried just saying, hey, can you do this because it is it's contaminating our water, and it's getting into the local rivers, and it's really bad for the plants and aquatic wildlife. And the population just did not care about that at all, so they didn't change their behavior at all. But when they went in and surveyed them, they found out that they really cared about their pets, and they really cared about their kids. Those were their top things that they cared about. So what they did is they put ads up around the city, and it showed a kid and a dog on a lawn, and they said, what are you putting on your lawn? Maybe you shouldn't. It was something like that. And that got really, really good feedback. People were like, oh my gosh, this could be harming my pets, it could be harming my kids. And so it kind of is, it's just trying to address what your people care about. You find out what's really important to them, and then you kind of market your goal based on that. So she talks more about that, but I don't know if that answered your question at all.
No, I can
Okay.
contact Portland and get a copy of
Okay.
the survey, see what they've done,
Yeah.
so I appreciate that.
Great.
I have
Again,
a
let's,
question.
go ahead.
I know you talked about, you mentioned a couple of cities. One, you mentioned the Seattle, Washington, and you said they use incentives because it was so far from the landfill. As you did your study, did you find any other type of incentives that any other cities were using in order to help the residents? Because I mean, it's often a challenge, incentive drives a lot of things. So what did you find?
Well, I mean, so like with the City of Peoria, you don't want to like reinvent the wheel. So there's a lot of even within this class, we've run a lot of studies where you start an incentive-based system, and it's going to start making a lot of changes. But I read stories about South Carolina, on the East Coast, just literally all over the U.S. where I don't know the different kinds of incentives.
Yeah, I know. Some of the incentive programs that they had in Seattle, and I noticed when I was researching some other cities they had recycling rewards programs where they worked with local businesses, and it was like kind of like fake money that you would get for recycling, and then you could use it at local stores like Walmart or something, and you could buy real things with it. So that has seen a lot of success in cities, but it would probably take a lot of resources to get that started and work with local businesses. So yeah, that's one successful one.
Let's thank our team.